Clip 1. Right from the beginning, the officer appears to move straight into enforcement without first establishing what is actually happening. Rather than asking DJ why he is flying the drone or whether he has permission to be there, she immediately places him in handcuffs despite there being no obvious attempt to escape or resist. Handcuffs are meant to be used only when they are necessary and proportionate, such as preventing violence, escape, or interference with an investigation. Instead of confirming the facts, she calls for additional officers, escalating the encounter. Even when DJ explains that he had already spoken with other officers who told him he was allowed to fly there, she makes no effort to verify his account before continuing with the detention. Throughout the encounter, DJ repeatedly assures the officer that he has no intention of leaving, yet the handcuffs remain in place without any clear explanation of what risk they are meant to address. When DJ correctly points out that operating a drone is not automatically a criminal offense, the officer simply replies that she'll find out. That response is concerning because police powers should be based on reasonable suspicion before restrictions are imposed, not used while officers decide whether an offense has actually occurred. The eventual removal of the handcuffs raises further questions about whether they were necessary in the first place. Simply asking someone to understand police actions is not a legal justification. Officers must be able to explain the objective legal grounds for restricting someone's liberty. At one point, the officer tells DJ that he is free to go, but moments later changes course and says she now requires his personal details. That change is significant because any detention or demand for information should be supported by a clearly identified legal power. DJ repeatedly asks a simple question: under which section am I being detained? Despite several opportunities, no clear answer is provided. Police authority cannot rely on uncertainty or assumption. Officers should be able to explain exactly which legislation they are relying upon at the moment those powers are exercised. When they cannot do so, it naturally raises concerns about whether the detention was lawfully justified. One officer confidently insists that police have the authority to inspect DJ's drone, yet never explains which law provides that power, even after being asked several times. If DJ is no longer detained and no specific legal authority is identified, that omission becomes highly significant. The discussion becomes even more questionable when another officer incorrectly claims that a 249-gram drone cannot be flown within 50 meters of people. Under current UK Civil Aviation Authority guidance, lighter drones fall under different operating rules than larger aircraft. When DJ offers to show the official guidance, the officer refuses to look at it. If officers are enforcing legal restrictions, they should also be willing to verify that their understanding of those rules is accurate. The officers later suggest that the misunderstanding happened because earlier colleagues failed to pass information along. Even if that's true, internal communication failures should never become the responsibility of the person being detained. The female officer repeatedly explains that she was simply doing her job, but policing requires more than taking action. Every decision must also be lawful, reasonable, and proportionate. Acting first and searching for legal justification afterward runs against the very principles that govern police powers. The explanation then shifts again, this time referring to previous incidents involving people climbing barriers. Past events involving others cannot automatically justify treating DJ as a suspect. Every encounter must be judged on its own facts and supported by reasonable grounds. If the officers were genuinely concerned about recording a prisoner, there were several less intrusive options available. They could have themselves moved the prisoner out of view or simply asked DJ exactly what he was filming before escalating the situation. The drone was treated as an immediate problem, with explanations appearing only afterward. DJ also points out that police routinely process suspects in public settings where photographs, fingerprints, and custody procedures are lawfully carried out. Claiming the issue was suddenly about protecting someone's dignity seems difficult to reconcile with the initial reaction and leaves the impression that the reasoning changed as the encounter progressed. Clip 7. DJ continues asking a straightforward question throughout the encounter. Under which legal section was he detained? Yet the officer responsible never clearly identifies the power being used. Another officer says he had quickly looked up aviation legislation before coming outside and suggests it gave police authority to stop and search someone suspected of breaking drone laws. Even if he was referring to the Air Navigation Order 2016, that legislation regulates aircraft operations, but is not itself a general police stop-and-search power. If another statutory power was being relied upon, officers should have been able to identify it immediately instead of appearing to search for justification after the detention had already taken place. The uncertainty becomes even more obvious when another officer openly admits that nobody present really knows the answer and says he had only just searched the law online before joining the conversation. While officers are not expected to memorize every piece of legislation, they should understand the legal authority behind any detention they carry out. Eventually, the Air Traffic Management and Unmanned Aircraft Act 2021 is mentioned, but no specific section is identified that actually authorizes the actions taken. Simply showing the name of an act is not the same as explaining the legal power being exercised. Telling DJ to look it up himself overlooks a basic principle. It is the officer's responsibility to explain the legal basis for restricting someone's freedom. After watching the full encounter, it's easier to understand why the matter eventually attracted legal attention. DJ explains that the Air Traffic Management and Unmanned Aircraft Act 2021 gives officers certain powers to carry out checks involving drones without automatically requiring detention. Rather than addressing that point directly or explaining why detention was considered necessary in these circumstances, the officers simply end the discussion by saying the conversation is going in circles before walking away. The central issue isn't that police approached a drone pilot. It's whether they fully understood and correctly applied the powers they relied upon. Effective policing depends not only on having legal authority, but also on understanding its limits. Encounters like this highlight why officers should know the law before exercising their powers, not search for justification afterward. If you enjoyed this breakdown,